This morning, an issue of concern all over the world, but more so in Nigeria, is what we are looking at now, growing unemployment concerns. And let's just delve straight into it. We have to discuss the issue with us this morning. Hamzat Lawal, Chief Executive Officer of Connected Development Code. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
As well as the Deputy Director of Nigeria Employers Consultative Association.
Yep.
I almost said agency. Wale Smart Oyerinde, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
So we have, and you are very well aware of it, and it's squarely on the doorsteps of employers to give employment to employees. What are the issues? Over the years, 2016, 2017, 2018, the figures, unemployment figures are on the increase, daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. What exactly is happening?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. You said 2016, 2017, the rate has been progressively increasing. And I want to say here that unemployment is not peculiar to Nigeria. Globally, there are issues of unemployment. The recent World Unemployment Report places Cambodia as the country with the least number of unemployment rate. And at the tail end, you have Syria, you have Burkina Faso, you have Senegal. So all over there are unemployment issues. And it's also very peculiar to Africa generally. But the challenge is not the issue of unemployment. But the challenge is, what are we doing to reduce the rate of unemployment?
Which is why it is at the doorstep.
At the doorstep of the employers. Because unemployment itself is not, it doesn't stand in isolation. It comes with so many baggages, so many consequences of unemployment. The challenge basically is, one, government cannot create employment to accommodate the whole masses, the youths of this country. A report said almost about 15,000.
I'm more, forgive me for butting in, I'm more concerned about what your members are doing, or what are the issues that they are having, to be able to tackle these issues, because they are employers. And part of the reports that we've also heard is that even employers are laying off workers now. So it's even making the concern grow even worse. So what is the issue with employers?
For employers, an average employer or employers want to create employment. You want to expand, but you are not working in isolation. Also, you work within an ecosystem. You work within an environment. You have to operate within the fiscal and monetary environment of the country. So if those environments are not favorable to you, then your chances of expanding becomes limited.
So what are the things that make it unfavorable?
Now, there are so many issues, so many contradictions in this environment. As the government in one build is trying to create an environment that is favorable to ease of doing business, then you have also regulatory agencies of government working in contrast to those attained by government. Businesses are bedeviled with so many kind of taxes, so many kind of levels. An average business owner runs his own, say, local government, as we call it, on his own. He has to burn diesel to keep the oils of production running. He has to create his own security structure. He has to build his own roads. So all those are leakages on businesses. What we have said, and what my principals have said over time, is this: let government create an environment that will enable the real sector to grow. Right. That is the way out for us to reduce this rate.
I think you've started from problems and the solutions, but we'd like to take it bit by bit. But let me come to Mr. Lawal. I know you're involved with working with marginalized communities, across the nation and the region. We see these figures, 23.1% unemployment figures, and we imagine that this is in urban areas where you see people carrying their paper bag with CVs from one place to another trying to get jobs, but you have gone to the rural areas. And I want to imagine there's a lot of population there. Just to connect the figures to what is on ground, just how much of unemployment issues do we have in Nigeria, especially for the rural areas?
Well, for the rural areas, it's an emergency, it's a disaster. When you go to communities, you see young people just loitering around, some of them under mango tree playing Ludo or just gisting. And if you look at the crime rates, it also connects to the unemployment rate because a lot of people are idle. So rather than being busy doing something productive, they would rather, contribute to social vices and menace in the society. So if we get concrete data, I would tell you it's above 23.1% if we get concrete data on the unemployment rate, particularly at the grassroots in Nigeria. And just to add my voice to this conversation and what my brother has said, when we look at unemployment, we need to look at the education. We don't have skilled laborers. Let's say it as it is.
Mr. Lawal, you have touched a nerve. That's what we say. But because it's something that we really need to delve with. We had a conversation with one that talked about employment on the one hand and then employability on the other hand. But let's quickly cross to Abuja. Markwe has a guest that will be of interest to us, maybe a sense of what government is doing, and we'll be back. So Markwe, let's take it away.
Thank you, Ayo. We have with us this morning Senator Kabir Barkia, who is the Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Employment. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much.
I wasn't sure if that was employment or unemployment, but it's a very big issue right now.
Yes.
I think was it on Monday this week or Tuesday, we woke up to the story about the huge controversy now being caused. We don't know whether this is a withdrawal or a withholding of unemployment figures. I think it was The Guardian that reported that the MBS was being prevented from releasing the current unemployment figures because they could be embarrassing. Now, the MBS, as National Bureau of Statistics, says, oh no, it's because we're not done with it. But right now, that issue has been raised and people are wondering, is there a problem with the unemployment figures? Is it true that the MBS really has not finished? Are you investigating that? Is this something that you saw and was of interest to you?
Yeah, thank you very much for having the opportunity to be here. Of course, as you said that, of course, generally unemployment is all over the world, but particularly we have a problem here in Nigeria. So just yesterday, there was an emergency motion raised in the Red Chamber discussing the unemployment, which, of course, even the Red Chamber is trying to have maybe declare emergency on unemployment. Of course, that figures you are saying, of course, we have to investigate because it is not officially related to us. And when it is officially related to us, that's when maybe we can declare it.
Yeah, but you are the Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Employment. And of course, the figures released by the National Bureau of Statistics will be of interest to you. Isn't that right?
No,
so if there is a controversy as to whether or not the MBS was being prevented from releasing the figures, it should be of interest to you, I would imagine.
Yes, of course, I doubt much if anybody prevents the MBS from reading the figures, because, of course, it's an interest to the public that definitely unemployment, everybody should know. Everybody knows that there's serious unemployment in this country.
Yeah.
And then the main reason, is many factors cause it. For example, now, I always say that, yes, maybe the government has to prepare the environment, for the private sector. If you just go and investigate, you see that all over the world, particularly Europe and America, the major employers are private sectors.
Sorry, Senator, I hate to take you back, and we will certainly come to, what exactly is causing unemployment and what can be done about it. But I wanted to be clear whether you saw this particular headline and whether it was of interest to you.
No, I didn't see it really.
You didn't?
Yes,
okay,
I didn't
so
see
but you have not heard anywhere that, there could be some conspiracy to stop the MBS from releasing unemployment figures.
I didn't hear any conspiracy to stop it.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, just yesterday, as you rightly pointed out, indeed, the Senate, moved a motion on the matter, and part of the resolution we're hearing is that living stipends should be paid to unemployed Nigerians. Was that an outcome of the discussions that
of course,
came up on the floor of the Senate yesterday?
Whenever there's emotion, in the flow, of course, everybody has the right to discuss his own opinion.
Yes.
You know, all what we are trying to achieve here is to make sure that, yes, maybe the employment is in place. So that, yes, at least this unemployment has been reduced, or maybe, at least eliminated if possible. So many senators contributed, and even some were saying, yes, it's better, to have to declare emergency on unemployment. Because, you know, this unemployment is the menace of that cause all the sorts of crimes.
What would that mean if the Senate says we declare unemployment, you know, a state of emergency should be declared on unemployment? What would that mean?
No, that means, of course, the government has to take it serious. Both federal, state, and local government. When they say declare emergency on something, that means, yes, special attention has to be given to that particular issue.
Because this is not the first time. I mean, just this week alone, we've heard state of emergency at least twice from the Senate. The first was on the issue of power, which came to the fore this week. Yeah, the Senate held a roundtable on it.
Yes.
And now we're also hearing declare state of emergency on unemployment. Some people will say that perhaps an overuse of the word emergency might now mean nothing at the end of the day. Do you fear that that could happen or be the fate of unemployment?
No, but if you refer back, you know, at the Red Chamber, there was no time that, yes, this emergency declaration was mentioned. But two sectors, you know, because of their importance to the country and to the public, you know, at least power. Power, of course, is the source of all. And we mean that we have a stable power in this country. Definitely we will have employment because all the industries that have collapsed will pick up. So that's why that, of course, the round table discussion on power said, okay, yes, at least if emergency is declared on also issue of power, definitely the government will give it the importance. When they say emergency, declare emergency, that means, yes, special attention has to be given to that particular issue. So that's why, of course, if you recall, at least previously, there was no made mention of maybe declaring emergency on unemployment.
So what measures will constitute declaring an emergency on the state of unemployment in the country?
Yes, of course, if you declare it, at least the measures that will attract the attention of the government, attract the attention of the public, so that serious attention, particular attention will be given to that issue. What is
the role of your committee on trying to reduce unemployment? I mean, you are Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Employment. Yes. What does that mean? What are the duties of your committee?
Of course, the duty of committee, of course, they say employment, labor, and productivity.
Okay.
We have, of course, some infrastructure under that labor. We have NSITM, we have NDE, you know. So all this will at least contributed. Like, for example, now, just last week, you know, we mediated between this national identity card because the workers wanted to go on strike. So we invited the labor unit of that organization, and we also invited the management of the organization, and we sat down. We find out, okay, what is the problem? What is causing them? And then we sit down, what is the way forward? We have to, so this at least major concern of the committee, that whenever there's a problem, I could recall, you know, sometimes last 2 or 3 months, also there are similar problems. When the General Labour wanted to go and sit up, we invited, of course, the President General of the Labour.
So what you do is mediation, largely.
Of course.
And perhaps oversighting the government ministries and parastatals that have to do with employment. Yes. But some people will argue that perhaps your functions should be bigger, which should include perhaps looking at unemployment figures and perhaps what these government agencies are doing to ensure that more Nigerians are captured in the employment net.
Yes, of course.
Is that right?
Yes, of course, that is right, because we look at all the MDAs. You know, for example, now, you know, during this last budget defense, we always encourage the MDAs. Yes, please, what is their personal cost? What is at least we have to find a way of, if possible, increasing the personal cost so that they have opportunity of employment come 2020 after the budget must have been approved by the, you know, just last Thursday we passed the budget at the floor, and then now we are really taking it to the presidency so that for assenting. So I think this what, of course, the committee role is very big. It doesn't only stop on mediating. So we also go to the extent that, yes, we bring all the MDs, we encourage them, we look at, okay, what is the, show them the figures, you know, if available figures that, yes, definitely something has to be done, to, at least to reduce the unemployment. But, you know, one thing Nigerians also, we tend to know, I keep on saying, even of course during the discussion, I stood up at the chamber. I said, look, one time I attended a conference in one of the Europe country, of which of course the chief judge of that country presented a paper. He was saying, look, the government work of the government is to get at least good environment for the private sector to do the employment. Because you see that at least at the moment now, all our industries, like this textile industry, this rubber industry, are functioning, are working. Definitely we have 60% of our employment will go to those private sectors. So but now everybody government, yes, the federal government, state government, local government. So the committee work is wide, very wide, not only mediation.
What are some of the measures that you are proposing? Yes, we already know that the Senate had a roundtable on power, and you have drawn the connection between power and employment. I mean, ensuring that more people have jobs. However, I mean, aside power, what else is your committee proposing? What else have you seen as some of the gaps that are present right now that makes it difficult for people to get jobs?
No, of course it is there. Everybody knows that. When, especially this power you made mention, when we have power, stable power, all the industry will pick up. And therefore, industries would look for, to employ, like, for example, like the youth we have many graduates roaming on the road. So that's what I think that at least one of the major things, at least that factor for the employment, it is this power sector. So, and that's why, of course, the Senate is giving particular attention. So that yes, if the power is stable, the industry will pick, and that employment opportunity will come.
I'm wondering now, I mean, moving forward, what some of your proposals will be to if you had, if the Senate, for instance, were to have a round table with the federal government, what are some of the things that you'll be telling them aside power, as I already mentioned? Would you tell them to put any other measures in place? I mean, because one of our guests already mentioned the fact that we do not have skilled manpower, and that sometimes affects the quality of people that are being picked for jobs. What are your thoughts on that?
Of course, education is also part of it. You know, when, of course, our universities at least are producing strong graduates that, of course, will be employed, skilled employment. That's what you call skilled employment. So education is also part of it. You know, the Committee on Education also are looking towards how they could also achieve maybe greater, perceptions. That, of course, we also create, employment opportunities.
Let's throw this back to Lagos and hear what some of our guests have to say. Ayo.
Yes, thank you, Mokwe. Let's bring it back to you now. Are you comforted, Mr. Lawal, with what the Senator has said about what needs to be done to bridge that skill gap you mentioned earlier?
I'm not sure I even understand what he said clearly, but definitely not. First, I wished he actually took responsibility, knowing that government have failed at all strata. Government have totally failed in terms of ensuring that we have enabling environment and create more opportunities for young people to be employed. Well, before we went to Abuja, I was trying to make us understand that, as employers of labor, the reality is our jobs are being exported. Jobs that are meant to be created in Nigeria are leaving the shores of Nigeria. One, we don't have technology. Two, we don't have a lot of investment around infrastructure. So even government itself is complicit. They're taking jobs.
When you say we don't have technology, pardon me, how do you mean? We don't have technology sounds like, canopy statement. We don't have the infrastructure or the manpower or the ideas. Which of them do you mean?
All of the above. So now the world is talking about the fifth revolution. We're talking about artificial intelligence. We're talking about using robotic. Do we have these technologies? Let's go to the education. Are we teaching young people in schools and the universities the reality of now? I'm sitting here today not because of the knowledge I gained from the university. The university never prepared anyone for the reality of today. And it's quite sad and unfortunate that when you look at the curriculum, what they are teaching younger people are outdated. You cannot go to schools abroad and then you have the same. You meet a student studying computer science that have never operated a computer before, and he's a final year student that would go for NYSC. And you want that young man to compete in the labor market. How is that possible?
Mr. Lawal, thank you. Mr. Unide, how real is this fact that Mr. Lawa has just stated in your experience as coordinator of employers?
Well, the issue of employability, I think also has been overflowed. And as I mentioned, we've passed the phase of declaring the emergency in education. Now there was a time we declared emergency on roads. Now it's emergency on. I think we have to go beyond the cosmetics. We have to go beyond the rhetorics and really face the real issues. If there are jobs and there are no qualified candidates to take up the jobs, then you create, it's another dimension of the problem. And the reality that he has painted, look, we are not really preparing our graduates for the work of the future. Yes, we have challenges now. And, many organizations will say, yes, there are employments, but the challenge has always been getting the right persons to fit in the job that are available. If you permit me, I want to say beyond, the senator mentioned the issue of creating an unemployment fund to give those that are unemployment. I think we should move away from this mentality of food park economy, as economists mention it. At the end of the month, all the states run to Abuja, park in hand, to collect allocation. Then we are replicating it in other dimensions, creating another fund for people to come and collect, at the end of the month, those that are not having jobs. People want to work. And average Nigerians, as we know, is very hardworking. They want to work. Businesses want to create jobs. It's just for government to do the needful, declare the emergency in the context of helping businesses to grow. If you go to Apapa, the Apapa Port Road is what we've been talking of for many years. Go to Agbara, the Agbara Industrial Estate, the road is also a mess. Then how will businesses in those areas, how will they survive? They are more concerned about fixing the roads. They are more concerned about other things than actually doing businesses. So the focus for us is this. Let government create an enabling environment for enterprises to grow. Government cannot employ. Senator said agencies will employ, trying to bring down the overhead so that they can employ. How many youths can government employ? Government naturally should not be the employers. It should create an environment for businesses to employ. The solution basically lies in the private sector.
What are the things that well, let's quickly mention that when the issue broke, it clearly came from the fact that NBS, was supposed to have released a particular data that has not been released, and consequently, this whole issue, blew open. We reached out to the NBS, and what we understand is they're still on the field gathering data, and consequently, the whole conversation is not ready. We have also read, that the NBS is saying that they lack adequate funds to really carry out all of the responsibilities that they need to carry out. How true that is, hopefully, when we eventually host them, we'll be able to get all of that facts. But we still have our guests here. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll look for practical, immediate solutions and futuristic ones. Please stay with us.
Yes, we're still talking unemployment figures, especially in the light of two major incidents. One is the fact that the NBS was expected to release figures, latest unemployment figures, and it would seem that owing to circumstances beyond its control, they say it's poor funding and also perhaps their work is not finished yet. They've not been able to release the figures. Some other people say perhaps that's not the issue. Maybe the figures are so bad that they're not able to release it just yet. We don't know what the situation is, but let's go with the statement of the NBS that they're not finished work on it yet. And then just yesterday, the Senate coming up to declare a state of emergency, or asking the federal government to declare a state of emergency on unemployment in the country because the situation is dire. We have with us somebody from the Senate, Senator Kabir Barkia. He's the Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Employment. Just before we went on break, you heard some of our guests in Lagos, I think Hamza, talking about technology being one of the problems. I mean, in relation to skilled labor, the fact that jobs that could be created here are being, taken abroad. Are you worried at that sort of development?
Yes, of course, what Mr. Lal was saying, of course, technology has to start somewhere. And just a typical example, I don't agree that, yes, completely that we don't to have the. I agree that technology is a part of also factor that would ease unemployment. But of course, we have to start somewhere. And I said that before. We don't. Now we have a round table discussion. Is there not technology people? They are in Lagos, and we are here in Abuja. So of course, the technology also coming. I mean, bit by bit. Just so if you look at Europe and America, before they were not at this level. But now they rose to this level. So, of course, definitely, we are also at a certain level, and we have also to reach higher level that of technology that, yes, will create employment opportunity.
Would you say that we fully understand the problems that we have with relation to unemployment in the country? So yes, there will be people at the lower cadre who perhaps haven't gone to school, are growing up, and of course will need jobs to be able to sustain their families, mostly found in the rural areas and what have you. There are also people who have finished school, perhaps secondary school leavers who need jobs, university graduates who also need jobs. People who have already been employed who feel that perhaps, they do not want to stay here anymore and they want to leave the country as well. That's another cadre of people who believe that they have been, who believe that they are underemployed. And then perhaps there'll be certain jobs which need to be filled by Nigerians, but Nigerians do not have the skills, the requisite skills. And as such, we see expatriates coming to take up jobs that ordinarily Nigerians should take up. Do we fully understand the complexity of the problems concerning unemployment that we have?
Yes, of course, when you understand something, that's when, of course, you definitely tackle it. So that's what I'm saying there. Issue of the technology, I say we are certain level now. And of course, generally, if you look at unemployment, definitely there are skilled and unskilled. And just like what I said initially, that if the government created environment, at least for the private sector, the companies, the industries to function. In industry, you have maybe from the chief executive to the middle cadre to even a cleaner. So you can see that at least it consists of all sorts of employment. So when, of course, the industries are working, are functioning properly as supposed to, you will see that all the opportunity of employment will be there.
Will our people have the skills? Because some people will tell you that in some instances, there are jobs for people to do, but people do not have the requisite skills to fill these jobs.
That's what I'm saying. Of course, you acquire skill maybe through the training. After you are in university education. In the university, most cases, it's theory. When you come out, you take you'll be employed for certain organization. So most of these organizations, they have how they train their staff. And then therefore, that's how you acquire the skill. And then you reach the level that, of course, maybe that industry wanted you to reach.
Looking forward now, just your last words, what can the people of Nigeria look to the red chambers to do for them? Especially now that you have declared, or now that you're asking that a state of emergency be declared on unemployment?
So, of course, the red chamber is what is trying. Let's say, for example, now, like last week, this Monday, of course, there was round table on this power. I still insist on this power because the major problem we have in this country. Of course, and that's also in there. And of course, like just yesterday also, there was another bill, on issue of our roads in the country. Of course, those are all what we have to make sure that, yes, the federal government is trying, until we make sure the federal government is doing something positive to overcome such problems.
Well, we have to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you very
Kabir
much.
Bakiria is the Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Employment. I was about to say unemployment, but no, on employment. Thank you for coming on the program this morning. Well, it's back to you, Ayan Kayode. Just quickly, this one is for your guest in Lagos. Do we understand the problems of unemployment? Because some people will tell you that indeed there are jobs, but we do not have the manpower to fill these jobs. What do the guests in Lagos think?
I think I would like Mr. Yorinde to start. Do you think we understand fully what this whole problem is?
Well, from what we've seen, what we've heard, at the national level, we don't seem to have a grasp of what exactly is the problem. We've had comments, we've had comments from the senator, comment from some other stakeholders in government that doesn't inspire confidence that yes, we actually know what exactly the problems what they have. We said maybe it's time that we need to redefine the context of declaring emergency. we had declared an emergency. What exactly do we mean? When government said that declaring emergency on unemployment, what exactly are the parameters for you to declare emergency? Can you solve a problem without engaging those that have the capacity to help you to solve those problems? Because it is, government cannot solve the problem. You cannot legislate jobs. You cannot decree jobs into existence. You have to have a focused strategy to deal with those issues.
And what would you suggest?
First, I would say, let's have a robust and friendly tax regimes. The finance bill was passed recently, notwithstanding the cries by employers and stakeholders. Look, there are components, provisions in that bill that seems to stifle businesses. Let's have a friendly tax regime. Let's have responsible regulation. Responsible regulation and regulators. Regulators should enhance businesses. They shouldn't stifle businesses. Most of the things we have presently are regulators that are actually stifling businesses. They don't care whether a business survives or not. All they want is, yes, generate income, and it becomes contradictory when a regulator becomes income focused.
Pardon me, Mr. Oyerindo, but one would expect that you in the OPS would have this roundtable with them to raise these issues, but that's a matter for another day. Let me bring this to you now, Mr. Lawal. You began this your conversation on this program by talking about the local governments and local settings and all of that. So let's take this problem, the solutions to these problems, to the states. We've talked largely about the federal government and how they are providing an enabling environment. Yesterday we had the governor here, and he said that as far as he is concerned, the organized private sector in Lagos State, they are having a field day, and you are saying no now, but that's we'll come back to that. So let's take it to the states now. Do you think the state governments have an understanding of what the issues are, and how can they tackle it?
Well, definitely not. They don't have an understanding of what the issue is. And for you to have an understanding, you must be led by data. For you to plan effectively, you must have data. And this data must be easily accessible by all key stakeholders. And when you look at the state government, we have a governance structure of feeding bottle governance. So let me break it, it's feeding bottle governance. And maybe if we do away with oil and gas, probably we would tackle these heads on. And when I say state government needs to rise, we're not only talking about formal education, informal education. Earlier I talked about we're exporting jobs. We're also importing jobs, by the way. So if you look at your local carpenter or your local, these guys who does POP, they're not from Nigeria. They're from neighboring African countries. What has happened to these various sectors? How are we ensuring that we set a standard so that when you pay for goods and services, you get them in return? And mind you, what we're also experiencing in various states is migration. So, before now, we have debate around rural-urban migration. But now we're having cross-continental migration. And all this is leading to it's because of the unemployment crisis that we're facing. Okay. So we need data that is easily available and accessible. Right now, I don't envy the job of a statistician general of the Federation, because it's obvious that people are sitting on him not to release the data.
Speaking of that data, on a final note, I'd just like to take your views on this. So when these figures come in eventually, do you see unemployment rates rising beyond what it is now or dropping? Yeah, I know, but just let me know. What's your take?
Definitely rising.
What do you see from 23 towards?
Probably to 30.
Thanks.
Probably to 30. Go to the streets and see what's happening. And my brother talked about the finance bill. You can't have unemployment rate rising and then you want to increase VAT by 7%. Are you trying to create jobs or actually have people lose their existing jobs?
Right. What do you see it rising, and what figure do you think we're expecting?
Yeah, I see it rising from privilege of the employer's position. We know what the businesses are facing. We know how many businesses are closing down. So I see it. We see it rising, basically.
What, 25, 30, 50?
Getting close to the 30 mark.
All right. That's perhaps certainly something for government to take on board. We want to thank you very much for being a part of this conversation. Mr. Hamzat Lawal, the CEO, Connected Development Code. Thank you very much for joining us. And Mr. Wale Smart Oyerinde is Deputy Director at NECA. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here. We're back in a moment. Please stay with us.
you.